Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Deborah Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. I have a returning guest and a new guest. And so, if y'all did not see the episode that we did with Dr. Patti Ashley, it was a really, really beautiful episode. She really talks a lot about grief. And during this time where we're all having collective grief, it's just really a very powerful conversation. She wrote a book that is called Shame Informed Therapy, and it's just brilliant. I just love her work. And when she was on the show, and we will make sure that we provide the link so you can also go back and watch that show, she was talking about her brilliant daughter, Elizabeth Herman, who is a school psychologist in Virginia, my state. And so I was like, well, y'all need to come on together. And it's interesting because, of course, they're coming on at a time when we all over the United States and certainly here in Virginia are trying to go back to school safely in whatever way that means for you. And so I think it's a very timely conversation. So Patti, welcome back to the program. I want you to give the audience an update in case they did not watch the first show. And Elizabeth, welcome to the program. Elizabeth Herman, very excited to have you here. We were talking off air and boy, you're going to be impressed. So, Patti, let's just start with you, and then you can introduce your amazing daughter. But tell us, remind the audience or tell the audience a little bit about your work.
Hi, and Deborah, thanks so much for having us back. And yeah, it is a time, isn't it? And it's it's great to have Elizabeth here with me today. We've been doing our Moms in Real Life work for a couple of years now, but I'm a psychotherapist here in Boulder, Colorado. And I have three books actually. The Shame book is the latest one, and the one before that was a memoir on grief, Letters to Freedom. The one before that was The Shadow of the Two Good Mother Archetype. So my work really started with the experience of women as mothers. That was my doctoral dissertation. And so to have my precious daughter here with me today and continuing the work, and hopefully, it's sweet for me to see her passion for making the world a better place for children and helping support parents. And so, yeah.
And she's a mom too, so she's doing all this work, and she's got two little kids that she's managing. So she's living one of those lives. So, Elizabeth, tell us more about your work, because I'm fascinated with
Oh yeah,
it and
no,
your
yeah.
family.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, right in the thick of it. So I have two. I have a 3-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter who's a second grader. Yeah, and so it's a little stressful. They're both starting back to school in the last couple weeks, face to face. So there's some challenges with that we'll talk about. But yeah, so I'm a parent. I am a school psychologist. I have been for about 12 years now, and I work in public schools supporting school-based mental health, again, assessment, but also across all ages from preschool through high school, just doing what I can to help kind of support the social and emotional needs of students through my role there. It keeps me pretty busy, but I do get to collaborate with my mom on some projects that we've done that have been really fun. So Moms in Real Life is one of them where, we had a group where we just brought moms together to kind of share and kind of practice some self-care by, that's just shared empathy of that motherhood experience and talking about how it's hard and how we can, really lift each other up through that, which is really fun and powerful. And then we collaborated on a online course that she put together in the height of COVID, really to help support parents and mothers in particular, just trying to juggle being at home and parenting full time while possibly trying to work simultaneously full time and all the other things that go along with that. So it's been really fun to collaborate with her on those things, and then, support kids and parents and all people who care for children as I can.
It's such important work, and I know that we were talking off air that you work in Virginia Beach, and you
Mhm.
said that you support an elementary school, a high school, and a magnet school.
I
So
do.
and this is a time when we're trying to figure out how to send our kids back to school safely. So maybe we could just talk about that a little bit, just since everybody's having to deal with it. I know
Yeah.
before we went on air, Doug mentioned that in their school district in Massachusetts, they actually had a major security breach. And so
Mhm.
they, took the schools offline. So,
Yeah, there's a lot going on right now in the field of education. I do feel fortunate to be working for a school district, and we also live in that division. We call them school divisions in Virginia, but school district, where it's very technology heavy, which, on the one hand, as a parent of a younger elementary age student, I'm sometimes a little, grumpy about, because I don't want us to lose that play-based learning that I think is still so relevant in those early grades. But at the same token, it actually ended up serving us pretty well in this crisis, because our district was equipped with one-to-one devices. So students already had assigned devices to take home and access to internet hotspots. So we were pretty well equipped to kind of send the kids home and sort of have an emergency learning plan to keep things going. It's not the same as face-to-face instruction. You can't recreate, the brilliance and professionalism of a good teacher through a screen. I just don't. I think you can do a pretty good job, and there are some good opportunities to learn there. But I think, especially when we're talking about our young learners, those pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade students, that hands-on, face-to-face, doing things, learning is just so valuable. So been a huge shock to the system, really. I think we've been trying to just kind of pick up and do the best we can. A lot of districts like ours have given parents the choice of face-to-face or to remain virtual. So in our district, we had about 60% of parents choose to return face-to-face when safe. So that's based on just some local metrics from our health department. So we've started transitioning back face-to-face in the last 2 weeks. And there's definitely a lot of rules. There's a lot of expectations. I think schools have done a good job kind of creating those clear expectations. There's a lot of tape on the floor and signs posted and dots on the floor, and kids are all wearing their masks and compliant with the mask wearing. I have a 3-year-old in preschool, and they require, the children to wear the masks in school. And I think they've done a really nice job helping that feel normal, that this is just how we do business now. And when we come to school, we do it. It's weird and it's not ideal, but none of this is really ideal. We're just sort of kind of trying to do the best we can and stay safe. So there's a lot going on with it.
I know, and there's and the work your mom and you are doing, it's just so important right now, because the reality is we're trying to navigate all this, and the security breaches. And you had mentioned crash my Zoom hashtag,
Yeah.
where kids were actually
Right, on Twitter and social media. Yeah, because the kids are really savvy with social media. If they want to, mess you up, they're going to figure out a way to do it. So if they
they're
want
smart
that
enough.
biology class canceled, they'll probably get it done.
Yeah, I mean, they're digital natives. Like we've never even understood. Always considered my kids digital natives, and my daughter's 33, my son's 32, but they're not really. Because they're it's the generation after them that are the ones that were born when we were putting iPhones in their hands. But
Mhm.
there's so much going on with this, but at the same time, you still are a mom, and you're still watching your own kids and
Yeah.
protecting them. You have all of us going through major post-traumatic stress disorder. We're going through collective grief. We're seeing what's happening politically, which is chilling. Doug and I did an episode about, are you going to be okay if the other side wins? Are you going to be okay? And Patty, let me ask you, how in the world are we, because we're navigating this, and we're doing our jobs, and we're taking care of our kids and our elders and ourselves, hopefully, probably not. Women are bad about that anyway. I know I'm pretty balanced, but some mornings I do not want to get out of bed, and I just don't want to get out of bed. So how do we continue to navigate this? Let me start with you, Patty, and then you can pass it over to Elizabeth.
Yes, I try to steer away from politics. And at the same time, it's definitely relevant because we're 20 some days out to this election. I did watch the debate last night. And one thing that I can't get off my mind, which I love, is um, when Kamala said, I love talking with Joe. And, this is what he says, it's all about relationship. And I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, really? That says it all. It's all about relationships and how we do relationships. So, I don't know what the outcome's going to be. And obviously, we're sharing a similar hope for outcome from just what you said. I'm making an assumption. So,
Pretty cool. I also want to say, Patty, I voted. Virginia is voting.
Yeah.
We already started voting. I voted. My husband voted. My daughter voted. My son voted. My friends are voting. Vote early if at all possible. Sorry, Patty.
yeah, I know. And we haven't opened that up yet, but I was really happy to hear how many people have voted compared to 4 years ago already. It's great. So, it's like the questions I asked last night, like, have the two of you talked about the ages of the president and what happens? Nobody really answered that question
No.
directly. And there was another question too that wasn't answered directly. So in answer to your question, I can't answer it directly either. Like, what are we going to do? I think we just have to pull on love. I mean, that came up for me yesterday and several different things I was listening to and reading. It's like the power of love, which is the power of the relationship and the power of empathy, I hope wins. Um, so I'm voting for love, and I know that's a word that is misunderstood and overused, but the idea of open-heartedness, relationship, and empathy. If we each individual has that as their intention, I think there's more power in that than we realize.
I agree. Well said. And I I tried to watch the presidential debate, and I happened to just turn it on anyway. Um, I turned it on for a second and immediately turned it off because you got to know what you can take.
Mhm.
And but last night I wanted to watch because due to the ages of the candidates, the two vice presidents have a higher percentage rate of being the president. So I personally, I thought Kamala was amazing. I kept thinking I'm sleepy, I'm going to bed, but I couldn't stop watching her. I'm sorry, I just thought she did a beautiful, amazing job. And I think you're right, Patty. I think it was focused on love. And but I don't want to discourage anybody that wants the other side. That I think are we we're Americans first, and it's more important. And that's what I talk about on social media. Vote, 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 vote.
One thing I would like to talk about, Deborah, now that just popped in my mind was that question by the little girl who wrote in and said, how are we supposed to learn from leadership? And the one thing that I wished Kamala had said was there's a difference between debating and bullying.
Ooh,
And I would I thought that was great that they had that question there because, children are, I believe, our divine teachers. And that was a great question. So I'm curious, Elizabeth, what your thoughts are on that too, because that really struck me. And I felt like I loved Kamal. I thought she did great. I think she could have said a little bit more about, effective leadership and because kids, that's the thing that bothers me the most is our children are seeing these adults bullying one another and lying. So, children learn by example. And we have to be, that's what the word discipline means, even though that's a dirty word right now. It means to teach and to train. It comes from the word disciple, which is follower. So, if we aren't good role models for our children, how can we expect them to learn anything different? Um, so, again, I'm curious, Elizabeth, what you thought about that question and how it is for children to see our leadership being bullies.
Yeah, well, it was funny after the presidential debate between the presidential candidates, there was a lot of like just silly tweets from like social studies teachers at the school where I work talking about, oh, I don't know if I should have assigned that as an assignment last night. Because, that's a common, so as in high school social studies, especially civics, you're going to assign government, you're going to assign to watch the debate and then talk about it. But then they were like, you know what? No, this is a good opportunity for us to talk about, how you conduct yourselves in a civil way, how to stand up to somebody who is either saying things that are just completely untrue and respond to that in a respectful way. I think Kamala did an excellent job being, responding to pretty obvious untruths, and pretty blatant, statements that were kind of hyperbolic and not factual, with grace. And I think to do that when you are kind of faced with someone who kind of is, as a woman, condescending you and acting like, oh, of course you're not doing that. And then to have that grace to show up and kind of keep her composure and respond respectfully, I think took a great deal of courage and a great deal of skill. I think she set a remarkable example for that last night. And I think that's something I think children can learn from. And I think that they are looking to that. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for us to model for them that's how they learn more than anything. And I talk about to teachers a lot when we're talking about, behavior and how we respond to behavior in the classroom. It really is all about our approach. So if you're telling kids not to raise their voices, but you're raising your voice in response to that, that's very confusing. That's a very confusing message. And so we want to be consistent, and we want to, again, show this is how we do things. This is how we behave. This is how we respond to someone we may not agree with ideologically in a respectful way.
Wow, Elizabeth, you give me so much hope. I am so impressed with that comment. That was amazing, because you're right. Because one reason why I watched it, besides the age of the candidates, I'm very impressed that we have a Black woman that's so smart and so brilliant up there. And I couldn't help but just be totally fascinated with this woman, because I believe women are good leaders. So no matter which side you're on, I wanted to support the woman I wanted to hear what this woman had to say. And I was not disappointed. I was not disappointed with the way it felt like they were having a debate. Yes, sometimes they went over, and sometimes the candidates did not answer the questions at all.
Right.
But that's sort of what we're used to, but we can still learn from that. So it felt more, and I could tell the media didn't like it, that there wasn't they didn't get on the floor and start beating each other up or anything, but it was more of a debate. And I really, really appreciated the way she handled things. But so you bring up some points, Elizabeth, that I hadn't thought about, because I don't have kids in school right now. But how in the world do you do your job when, and I know you're lucky to have, your mom in this field too, but we are all so traumatized. I mean, we're traumatized, our children are being traumatized, and I'm not even blaming anybody. We're terrified of what's happening with COVID. I know we just had a scare. My sister got exposed, and we actually happened to see my sister that weekend, a couple of days after she was exposed. But we were being safe. We were wearing our masks. So luckily my sister didn't catch it, and we didn't, because we were social distancing, and I wanted to hug my sister. But how do you, I don't even, how do you navigate this world?
I think it's tough. I think, we've had a lot of time now. I mean, I think in the beginning, and again, I think that's part of why the collaboration with the course was so important for us, because there was that isolation, right? Like we were all sort of isolated in our own homes. And I strongly feel like, and my mom and I have talked about this a lot, that's just no way to parent. You can't parent in isolation like that. It's in regular times, or in, uncertain times, you need that group of people, that person, somebody who you can rely on to talk to. And just when things are hard, because it is hard, like people don't like to do things that they're not good at and they're not familiar with. Like novel things as adults, like is something we tend to avoid, right? Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to play tennis. I'm not going to do that. Parenting, we've never parented before when we become a parent. We don't have any experience with it. We might have some experience maybe watching other people's kids, but as any of us who have children know, that's not the same. That sleep deprivation is not something that happens to you until you've actually had your own children. And then also just that connection with them, that deep well of just dread, if anything were to happen to them, is something that like you just can't anticipate either. Like someone who doesn't feel like they're very anxious, I feel like I've had that conversation with many of my friends who are mothers. I never felt like I had anxiety before, but now as a mother, it's like constant. I just can't shake that sense that like something could happen. And so it's so powerful. And I think we're all learning how to navigate it. And you need that place to learn with people who you can be safe with and not worry about judgment or that you're not doing it right. And so for me, I know like we created that opportunity for people just to hear us share that, like, no, this is hard. Like this, it's not hard because you're not good at it. It's hard because it's hard. And So I think being
Well said,
honest
yeah.
about that, right? Like we just need to be more honest about that. And I feel lucky that I have a village of friends, mom friends, and that are live close proximity to us. Where we've actually, one of my good friends has started we call it running club, and the kids basically go run around the cul-de-sac. It's like 4 kids, and then we get to kind of catch up, social distance outside, and just share kind of how it's going. And I think for us, that's a huge, just a thing we look forward to every week, because it's our opportunity just to kind of decompress and say, oh, can you believe, like, yeah, that Zoom call with the second graders, like that was a nightmare. Yes, and so just to have that is just so valuable, and it's so important.
Yeah, I think sometimes people, it's sort of like what happens on social media. You see somebody else having this incredible life because they have all these amazing posts, and you think, what's wrong with me? Why am can't get out of bed? I'm so depressed. I'm staying away from the news, but now I want to watch because our president is COVID. I want him to be okay. I'm empathetic, but it's so confusing. And then, of course, families are divided. I know that, we're divided in my family. There are some people that adamantly believe that, one side, we're divided. And so I think we have to keep saying we're not okay. We're figuring it out. And I love the example that you were giving. And will y'all talk a little bit more about this course? Because one thing, people need help. People need help across the board. And you're a school psychologist, but you can't do everything. I mean, Patti, you're trying to help people deal with grief, but is it as easy as I just have to meditate more? I have to, it's like
Yeah.
I'm pulling out all the tools I've used in my life and still sinking. And now I am walking a path with my husband's very profound dementia that's getting worse every day, and it's freaking me out, freaking me out, and impacting my children. And I know, Patti, what you went through, losing your first husband, and then your fiance. So what do we do? I mean, it seems like, and that's why I wanted to have y'all back on too, because I'm not saying any of us know the answers, but there are definitely things that we can start doing to help us all navigate through this. So Patti, let me give that to you. But if you and Elizabeth can talk more about the course too, I just, we need help.
Yeah, well, again, I love working with Elizabeth because on many levels, obviously. But, listening to her present time with the little ones and rewinding the clock back to my motivation for writing my book and doing my doctoral dissertation on women not feeling good enough. And I think about how the inner experience that women have of not being good enough hasn't really changed all that much since my research. Now, lifestyles have changed. We have the internet, we have all the social media, we have, technology, we have so much more. We were talking about internet earlier in terms of the generations. I think Elizabeth still grew up. My kids were growing up when it was new, and we would plug in the AOL line. But even the next generation after that grew up with high speed internet from day one. So lifestyles have changed. However, this inner experience of understanding our social emotional self is still brand new. I always say, what we know now about how children develop is really hot off the press. It wasn't until the mid 20th century that we started researching how children develop, and we realized we'd done it wrong for a long time. And so my work is how I came to understand women tend to internalize that. And Elizabeth said something earlier about and I think I made a comment that's a great point. She said, what did you say? It's not me. It's not that I'm doing something. It's not that I'm having a hard time. It's that it's hard.
It's hard. Yeah, it's just hard
Yeah.
because it's hard, not because you're doing it wrong. Yeah.
Right. So looking at the collective experience of the expectations that are put on women as mothers and fathers too. Fathers are so much more involved now than they were when I was doing my research in the 90s. But still, I think because we're biologically wired to really want to protect our babies, we have this internal experience of blaming ourselves and not feeling good enough. And Elizabeth, it's funny you said that because I have so many clients that I've worked with who are moms And they say the same thing. I didn't have anxiety until I had children.
Yeah.
And so now with COVID, let's add another layer of that. And I feel like my optimistic perspective of all this is hopefully we're rewiring our nervous system to understand that we can no longer avoid our social emotional needs anymore. We can't run out to the park. We can't run out to do all the things that we were used to doing to distract ourselves. We have to um, look at some things that we don't really want to look at because they could be uncomfortable. So that's what we talk about in our course. So the course has PowerPoints and videos and worksheets, meditations. But again, Elizabeth and I together developed what we felt might support people through the isolation. And then we realized it's hopefully going to support people, to infinity and beyond, because we have a lot of cleaning up to do here in terms of understanding that. And it's so hard to find that self-compassion and be kind to ourselves, because the DNA is holding memory of a lot of old beliefs that are very shame-based. And so do as I say, not as I do. You should be ashamed of yourself. Stop crying before giving something to cry about, all that stuff. So we're cleaning all that up, and we have to learn as adults how we have inner experiences that aren't congruent with being a authentic, whole, healthy individual as we parent at the same time. And so Bruno Bettelheim, a very well-known child psychologist, said that parents are doing two jobs at once. They're doing their own inner work as well as helping their kids develop a sense of self. And so I think it's really important to emphasize this is not easy, and that the more we can tolerate discomfort, the more we're going to get through it together to something
And
different.
also, and I don't know, I'm sure you're seeing this too, but sometimes when things are really hard, it almost feels like I can just hold my breath and push through it. No, you can't really. And sometimes I actually find myself holding my breath, and it's like, all right, stop, breathe. So, I mean, Elizabeth, we can't just hold our breath and push through with this.
Yeah. Well, I think
We don't
too,
know
part of it is
this is
letting,
going to.
yeah, and that like kind of how you alluded to that grief process. And I know you all talked about that last time, but I think that applies to so much of this because, like you were saying about grasping at all the self-care strategies, it's almost like we have some days you just have to let that go and say, I need to accept that this isn't the way I thought it should be. It's not going to be that way. I wanted it to be a certain way, or I think I should be doing it a certain way, but that's not going to happen today. Today, I'm just going to be, and I'm going to just go minute by minute and do the best I can and show up to each minute as best I can. And that's okay too. Like, I don't have to accomplish something every day. I don't have to remember to meditate every day. Maybe I know that I have a better day when I do, but if I'm not there today, I'm not there today. And again, letting that be okay. It's like you have to give yourself permission to let go of what you feel like you should be doing and just take care of yourself, because this is really hard and really stressful. It's all this unknown floating around. I don't know. I had to go pick up groceries yesterday, and that random person I walked by wasn't wearing a mask. And so it's like that constant dread and worry about this unknown, because you don't. It's this invisible, virus that we think we are beginning to understand, but there's still a lot we don't know. And there's so many people who carry it asymptomatically. So then that's this lurking, scary thing. There's just a lot of scary things lurking out there that we can't control. And I think as parents, that's what we try to do, right? We try to control the environment, control our kids, have them do it. Because if we're not controlling them and controlling it, people are going to see us and think we're terrible at this, right? Our kids having a tantrum in the Target, so we must be awful moms because we can't control them. Whereas, leaning into that and moving through it and saying, I'm just showing up today, doing the best I can. This is what my kid needs to cry today. Today is hard, and that's where we are, and that's okay.
And we've always said, stay in the moment, stay in the moment. But there's a lot right now. I don't want to be in the moment. I don't want to, and I want to plan, but I can't right now. I can't because of the situation that where I am in my life. I just can't right now plan. And so it's my daughter with Down syndrome, she's always been so good about in the moment. She is in the moment. And we've always been told to stay in the moment. Well, we're in the moment, but I don't want to be in this moment anymore. And in 2021 December yet. I mean, I don't want to be here anymore. Sorry. Well, and I'm just
well, it's
being
again,
honest
anytime we're in the
because,
messy.
yeah, no, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Oh, I was gonna say, anytime we're in something that's like, a messy middle, right? That like messy middle space where it's not pretty and we're trying to figure it out and we don't really know what we're doing. We don't want to stay there long, like no one is, but I feel like collectively as a globe, we're in the messy middle. And so it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good that we can't say, okay, well, next month I'm gonna be able to go on that trip. We don't have that right now. We don't have, like, even my mom and I've talked, we haven't seen each other since we're on separate parts of the country. And we've talked, well, maybe spring, maybe,
Right.
we don't know.
Right.
Like, you just don't know. You can't plan. So you can't create that thing that you want to look forward to that really keeps you going. So you almost have to rethink it, right? We have to almost come up with new things. Like, so what's something else that I can have to look forward to, or something else that'll help get me through to this next thing, because I can't do those things that I would normally do.
And do y'all think it, because I've always been obnoxiously optimistic, even though being an entrepreneur, just being alive has taken some of that out on me. But, what do we, what do we do now? What should we be doing because when you say taking care of ourselves, it just seems like it's different now, because what I did to take care of myself in the past, it's not working as well as it used to. And I am doing more of what both of you have said, in that is, especially what you said, Elizabeth, my kid needs to cry today. I just loved that. And I remember when I first had children, I would walk into the room, make sure they were still breathing in the middle of the night. And, and I was like, stop. But what suggestions do you both have to help us navigate this even more? Because I don't even think we understand what self-care means. I'll give you an example. I feel lately that I need to be more deliberate about hydrating myself. It just feels like my body needs to be hydrated. I'm a little bit more careful with what I'm eating. But I know that probably everything hasn't changed what it means to take care of ourselves, but it feels like in some way it has. Like you said before, Patty, we could go and distract ourselves. Well, so let me turn that over. Patty, we'll start with you. Tell us how to settle this.
Yeah, I can't, but I can say a couple things from what you said. First of all, the empathy that I'm feeling for having a child with Down syndrome and a husband with dementia, is already major life situations that I'm imagining you've had to learn to find the strength to manage. And I also make up that you do it beautifully. And we add everything else that's going on, in our political climate and with the pandemic and on and on and on. And fires. I mean, I'm having a hard time because there's so much smoke, here in Colorado from all the fires and all. Anyway, so there's a lot of other things outside of what you've already just managed in your own life. And, and I'm listening to stories every day, and it's so hard to hear, my mother died of COVID. I want to leave my husband of 15 years. The tragedies that are happening along with the global pandemic and everything else that we're dealing with. So it does require an intense amount of inner strength. And I think that's what I'm saying when I'm being hopeful that we're going to be able to rewire ourselves when we can come back to the present moment, whether we like it or not. I mean, that's what mindfulness is. It's Kabat-Zinn defines it as moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness. And so, like what Elizabeth was saying is, I'm going to be in this right now, and I'm not going to judge myself for whether I'm, eating too many cookies. I'm laughing because she posted her cookies.
I did make cookies. I was prepared this time.
And I've definitely put on the COVID-19 pounds. So, how do we do self-care? What is self-care? And I think self-care is that moment to moment. Non-judgmental is the key here. We are so hard on ourselves. And when we and that goes back to the shame that I wrote about in my book and the neurobiology of that. It's in our DNA, it's in our nervous system, it's in our brain, and we need to give our bodies something different. So the self-care is that something different. And I loved what Elizabeth said earlier too about, we don't like to try new things. So, in my work, I really encourage creative arts and music and dance and movement, yoga, outdoors, being in nature, but I also want to get it aligned with what somebody isn't going to be uncomfortable doing. So to find what you really enjoy doing and give yourself permission to do it in the downtime instead of running out and going to happy hour. What is it you enjoy doing, even if it's not good? I mean, I do art and I call it like first grade art, because I'm not worried about it being in a museum or a gallery. I do it because it feels good to me. And I've been doing it for years. It started with mandalas when I was still in Virginia 20 some years ago. And, so that's something I enjoy. And I do that, or I also I like to do a lot of things. So I'm fortunate about that. I dance around the living room. I listen to music. I'm starting to play the guitar. I'm taking voice lessons. And all of that actually rewires the brain. So whatever we can do that, and like Elizabeth was saying, the running group, and then there we are with our friends and we're connecting. We're wired for connection as well. So connecting and finding things that we enjoy doing, even though it might be hard and it might be a stretch. But I know there's a lot of closet guitar players and artists out there. I mean, I can't tell you how many high school girls I've worked with that are incredible artists, but they won't draw because they don't think they're good enough. And that's the whole perfectionism that gets set up early on. And, they'll show me their art and they're like, it's not that good. And I'm like, it looks just like a photograph. So, to give them permission to be in that creative space. But when you get into the perfectionism, or I can't do that, it doesn't have the same effect of creating the new neural networks that say, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm lovable. That back to the moment. And when we allow ourselves to be in whatever creative or nature or experience that we enjoy doing, we actually are, that's good self-care. And it may be just a minute. I always say this about moms, you might just have a mindful minute of something that feels good to you, but make sure that you give yourself permission to have that.
I think permission to take time too. I think that's hard because we feel like we're supposed to be doing all of these things, and then we don't let ourselves take an hour to do nothing. Maybe it's doing nothing, right? Like or whatever it is. Again, like you were saying, that thing that fills you up and makes you feel better. Giving yourself the time, because I think we put pressure on ourselves to fill every minute with meaningful, productive activities. Okay, this is my designated self-care time. And I'm gonna, and I think when you're in that space where you're almost over planning your self-care, you've almost like removed the point of engaging in that, right? Like you're like over scheduling yourself. So it's like you need to sort of I would say like we need to get better about, again, giving ourselves permission to like be a little selfish, take a little time for ourselves, because we, again, as a parent, I know I need to model that for my kids. I need to say, you know what, I'm noticing that this has been a really hard day. I'm really stressed. There's a lot going on. I'm going to go for a bike ride by myself and just give myself some quiet time, to just take that day off. And I think and it doesn't have to, it can be anything. It can be whatever it is for you. I just think taking away, again, the judgment of it, what it's supposed to look like, it's self-care is supposed to be meditation. Self-care is supposed to be, whatever. Yeah. And just giving yourself permission to have the time to do it, because I think we, especially as women, get pulled and spread really thin as caregivers and by our regular jobs and all the other things. We want to do all the things, and we just can't. But you have to take care of yourself, because if you put yourself last, you won't be able to do anything. So that's just, I think it's so important that you just let yourself have the time you need. An hour of your day is just 4%. It's 4% of your entire day. So you're worth 4%.
Right. But Elizabeth, what do we say to the children?
About what? All the things? There's a lot to say about like COVID or the stress.
I would maybe just the one thing that I keep saying to my children, my adult children, is that, just give everybody a pass right now because people are so stressed. So if somebody cuts you off or they get too close to you or whatever we consider rude behavior or bad behavior, just sort of cut everybody a little bit, as much slack as possible, because people are so traumatized right now. And
Yeah.
so I don't have little kids. I've missed little kids around me, but what what do we say to the little kid, to our kids, to make them feel safe when we're not feeling safe?
Yeah, I think acknowledging that things are hard and weird and different, right? Like they know that things are not normal, right? Like I had a neighbor mention recently about how she wasn't sending her preschooler back to school because she's like, I just don't want him to see people in masks. I don't want him to know about that. And I sort of thought that was kind of a disservice, right? Because to him, because one, it sort of minimizes his awareness, and there's obviously weird things going on, like things are not normal. And so I think it's better for us to be more open with our children about, they don't need to know the details, but again, I have a 7.5-year-old. Like she knows about COVID-19. She knows it's a virus. She knows we need to wash our hands. She knows we need to wear masks when we're going out, and we need to social distance. And they need to know that. I feel like even my 3-year-old, the germs, but in the beginning, why is my school closed? Because of the germs. And so, he understands. They wash their hands anyway. We explain to them about germs. So I think explaining there's a really scary virus out there that makes things hard for us to be around other people because we're not quite sure how we're spreading it. We think it's when we're breathing or touching things and touching our face. So we need to keep our face covered and keep our hands clean and keep distance so we don't get people sick and we don't get sick. And so I think kids understand that. It's not super complicated. It's pretty, basic, wellness. And so I think that, and again, explaining this is what we're all doing and this is what we're doing to help each other. Because again, we're doing this really for ourselves, but also for our whole community, right? We want to not just keep ourselves safe, but keep our neighbors safe because we might be carrying it. And we just want to be respectful of other people. So I think being honest and approaching it in like this is how we treat people way. We treat everyone with respect. And so we're going to be respectful of the fact that there's a virus going around we want to be careful about.
Well said, beautifully said. And I always did that with my kids. I would get criticism for it because, I'm older, I'm 60, but I always let them make as many choices as they could. And I always told them what was going on in an age appropriate way. And I just felt that I was going to make them better thinkers by doing that. And my daughter has Down syndrome, but she has always been a good communicator. So I just thought it was the right way to, do it. I wasn't raised that way as a kid, but I know that I've kept you up longer than I promised, but I think the work you two are doing is just so powerful. But I want to make sure that we have time for you to tell us how to find out about your work. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be interested in the course. And so can you tell us, the website, any social media you're on, any way, that they can follow the work that you're doing so that we can all try to be a little healthier and safer?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like the debate. Yes, I can answer that, Deborah, but I would like to speak to something Elizabeth just said.
And please do, and please do. Because we have it. We have as much time as we need, but
Um, I like that she gave us the example of her friend who said, "I don't want my children to see the mask." I mean, this is what I think we're really having to clean up right now is this whole idea that we can protect our children from pain and suffering. Where did we get the idea that we can
Yeah.
protect our kids from suffering? Life is full of it, right?
Yeah.
What we really need to do is help our children understand how to get through
right.
challenging times.
Mhm.
And
I was
again, it's
was taught
not what's that?
I wasn't taught that. I don't think we teach that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to protect our kids. I mean, like when my father died, nobody wanted to talk about it. That's why I do the work I do. I thought this is really weird. Something really bad happened and nobody could talk to me about it. So I became a therapist. And I hear the stories all the time, of serious illnesses in the family, and we don't want to tell the kids because we don't want to upset them. Like the kids don't pick up the feeling in the family when there is something going on. Kids, I mean, there's so much that we feel on a sensory level that doesn't even have language. That's the most important part here. And so our children are going to feel safe when we're able to give them age appropriate context for what's going on. And I love what Elizabeth said, because she just said it so beautifully. Here's what we say to the kids, you know, simple. It wasn't like, oh my God, we're all gonna die. You gotta wear your mask.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know the statistics. They don't know the numbers of death. I mean, they don't need to know that level of detail, right? They just need to know there's germs.
Yeah.
They don't need to know, about respirators. That's not relevant to them. But I think, yeah, being respectful of them as human beings who need to know what's going on. I think that's where it all comes down to, right? Is I would want, it's like kind of just the idea of treating children with the same respect that you feel like you deserve as a grown-up. They don't deserve less respect because they're shorter. They deserve the exact same amount of respect that we do. And so I think if we're coming from that place of respect, and how do I respect you as a human being who deserves to, know what's going on and not be kept in the dark and confused. That's when kids get confused and they act out, because you're not being straightforward with them. And I think if we can just be respectful and honest and understand that, like my mom was just saying, like, they can handle it. Like, and when we are respectful of them, that teaches them that you can, it's a Glennon Doyle quote. She said some amazing things. Her most recent book, Untamed, is like one of my favorite things right now. I feel like it's gotten me through COVID. But you can do hard things, right? Like, that's what we want to teach our kids. You can do hard things because it's hard to human. It just is. And we need to teach them that they can handle it. And if we try to take that away from them and handle that for them, that's incredibly disrespectful.
Beautiful. Yeah. Very well said. So as far as finding us, my website is pattiashley.com. It's Patti with an I, Pattiashley. And the links for the course are on there on my front page. And links to do Authenticity Architect coaching with me, which is psychotherapy/coaching. So I can do it out of state, anywhere, just to help people kind of cope with what's going on and find their authentic self. Links to my books are on there as well. Lots of videos that I've done, like the one with you, Deborah, and Elizabeth. How can people?
Yeah, so my website is elizabethashleyherman.com. And we do have a Moms in Real Life Instagram that we don't probably utilize as much as we can, just because, but we don't have a social media manager right now. But so we do, but it's at the Moms in Real Life. And so when we do update things or have new things going on, and there's some links in there too, that links to the course, the link in bio goes to the course, and then our Facebook page, and our two websites. And and I do parent coaching. Again, I'm not really much right now during the school year. My full-time job is pretty demanding, as well as my mom life. So but I mean, again, I'm happy to consult. And again, I would definitely refer people if they wanted some support immediately to check the course out. And my mom, you did the free one too, Go In, Not Out. That's a great free option, just about kind of, again, going inward and kind of working on yourself during this tough time.
Yeah. And I forgot to say, every Friday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, I do a Facebook Live, and I'm doing a shameless Facebook Live series and interviewing people who work in various capacities. This week I have Stacy Lovato, who's a mindfulness mama coach, and she's going to talk about her work with Dr. Shefeli, who's a conscious parenting coach, and how shame, a lot of what we talked about today, if you think about it, is the shame lurking underneath being good enough and being able to be non-judgmental and all that. So I've got that coming up. Then I'm going to do a grief series in November and December, Grief and Grace in the Holidays. So every Friday, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, join me on my Dr. Patti Ashley page. The link is also on my website for that.
And I'll make sure we provide the links too, including Dr. Ashley's previous episode. And I'm hoping y'all will both come back on again. So thank you for everything you're doing. Y'all stay safe. I think that, after this is all said and done, we're going to be better as human beings. This will help us become better human beings. But I just do want to continue to acknowledge this is hard, and it's hard for all of us. So I just want to acknowledge that. So thank you for your wisdom. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
Well, thanks for having us, Deborah. And I just want to acknowledge, I love to hear you say the word y'all. I say that here in Colorado, and people go, what? But Pranama, y'all.
Great word.
I know. Yeah, thanks, Deborah. It was so great to meet you.
Yes, I agree. And I look forward to, once again, you're coming on again. So everybody have a great, safe day and take care of yourselves.
You too.
Yeah. Bye-bye.